Mataji, you are live now.
Okay,
Please go.
thank you so much. So, welcome to another Wednesday evening with us online at ISV. And today we're going to, today's a special one because we usually do the Bhagavad Gita on Wednesdays. But today I was requested, we did Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Goswami Maharaj's life story during his disappearance day. And I was requested to continue and finish it because we had to stop at some point. And it was really good to read from this amazing book by His Grace Bhakti Vikas Swami Maharaj. And today we'll be concluding the book. So that's the plan for today. It's not the Bhagavad Gita. We're doing this Bhakti Siddhanta Vaibhava by Bhakti Vikas Maharaj, and this is part 2. We're wrapping it up today. So before we start anything, let me first offer obeisances. We start with the Mangalacharan, which is prayers, asking for blessings and guidance. These are Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Goswami Maharaj's deities. And we'll start with the Guru Pranam. So before I start, I take the blessings of my Shiksha Guru, His Grace Srivas Pandit Prabhu, and my Diksha Guru, His Grace Vaisheshika Das Adhikari, both of whom have lit the lamps that guide me along my way. I am eternally indebted to them for every step that I take in Krishna consciousness. If there's anything that is short or falls flat or any mistakes, any shortcomings, it is certainly my own blunders, for it is with great humility that I accept their graceful guidance and no fault of theirs at all. Let's start with the Guru Pranam mantra. Om Ajnanatimirandasya Jnananjana Shalakaya Chakshurunmilitam Yena Tasmai Shri Guruve Namaha. Shri Chaitanya Manobhishtam Sthapitam Yena Bhutale Swayam Rupa Kada Mahyam Dadati Swapadantikam Vandehaham Shri Guru Shri Yuta Padakamalam Shri Gurun Vaishnavamscha Shri Rupam Sagrajatam Sahagana Raghunatanvitam Tam Sajivam Sadvaitam Savadhutam Parijana Sahitam Krishna Chaitanya Devam Shri Radha Krishna Padan Sahagana Lalita Shri Vishakhanvitamscha Vanchakalpatarubhyascha Kripa Sindhubhya eva cha Patitanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha Namo Mahavadanyaya Krishna Prema Pradayate Krishnaya Krishna Chaitanya Namne Gaura Tvise Namaha Panchatattvatmakam Krishnam Bhaktarupa Swarupakam Bhaktavataram Bhaktakyam Namami Bhakta Shaktikam. He Krishna Karuna Sindhu Deenabandho Jagatpate Gopesha Gopika Kanta Radha Kanta Namostute Jayatam Surato Pangor Mama Manda Matirgati Matsarvasya Padambojau Radha Madana Mohano Divya Vrindaranya Kalpadrumada Srimad Ratnangada Simhasanastau Srimad Radha Srila Govinda Devau Preshtyalibi Sevyamanav Smarami Shriman Rasa Rasarambi Vamsi Vata Tatastita Karshan Venu Swaner Gopir Gopinata Shri Estunaha Tapta Kanchana Gaurangi Radhe Vrindavaneshwari Vrishabhanu Sute Devi Pranamami Haripriye Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Srivasadi Gaura Bhakta Vrinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare. So last time when we started with the book, I had added in a few Guru Pranam mantras. So we offer our deepest respects, and in a way we take the blessings and permission before we start any preaching or any effort to share this wonderful spiritual knowledge that we have received. And in the process we thank the Lord, We take blessings of the Lord and the Vaishnavas and the parampara from which we come, because without their permission and their guidance and blessings, no knowledge can be properly transferred. So in the process, there was a very nice Mangalacharan in the very beginning of the book that I wanted to read. So I will add that to this. नम ओं विष्णुपादाय कृष्णप्रेष्ठाय भूतले श्रीमते भक्तिवेदान्त स्वामिन्निति नामिने नमस्ते सरस्वतीदेवे गौरवाणी प्रचारिणे निर्विशेष शून्यवादी पाश्चात्यदेशतारिणे नम ओं विष्णुपादाय कृष्णप्रेष्ठाय भूतले श्रीमते भक्तिसिद्धान्त सरस्वतीति नामिने श्रीवर्षभानाविदेवी दायिताय कृपब्धये कृष्णसम्बन्धविज्ञान दायिने प्रभवे नमः माधुर्योज्ज्वल प्रेमाध्या श्रीरूपानुगभक्तिदा श्रीगौरकरुणासक्ति विग्रहाय नमोस्तुते नमस्ते गौरवाणी श्रीमूर्तये दीनतारिणे रूपानुगविरुद्धापसिद्धान्तदान्तारिणे नमो गौरकिशोराय साक्षात् वैराग्यमूर्तये विप्रलम्बरसाम्बोधे पादाम्बुजाय ते नमः नमो भक्तिविनोदाय सच्चिदानन्दनामिने गौरशक्तिस्वरूपाय रूपानुगवराय ते गौराविर्भावभूमेस्त्वं निर्देशतः सज्जनप्रिय वैष्णव सर्वभौम श्री जगन्नाथाय ते नमः ग्रंथेरा आरंभे खोरी मंगलाचरण गुरु वैष्णव भगवान तीनेरा स्मरण होय विघ्न विनाशन अनायासे होय निज वांछित पूरण. At the beginning of this book, I invoke auspiciousness by remembering the Guru, the Vaishnavas, and Bhagavan, by remembrance of whom all obstacles are destroyed and personal desires easily fulfilled. Before we start any lecture, we sing this short little song. It's the Jai Radha Madhav from the Geetavali, and it is how Prabhupada used to start all his lectures, so we maintain that process. It's a small little song and very sweet. It draws in the heart and mind the picture of Vrindavan with the Radha and Krishna and the gopis and the cowherd boys. And Prabhupada describes it very nicely by saying, Krishna is the lover of Radha. He displays many amorous pastimes in the groves of Vrindavan. He is the lover of the cowherd maidens of Vraj, the holder of the great hill named Govardhan, the beloved son of Mother Yashoda, the delighter of the inhabitants of Vraj, and he wanders in the forests along the banks of the river Yamuna. Jaya Radha Madhava Jaya Kunja Bihari Jayo Radha Madhava Jayo Kunja Bihari Jayo Gopijana Vallabha Jayo Girivaradhari Jayo Girivaradhari Jayo Radha Madhava Jayo Kunja Bihari Yashodanandana Brajajana Ranjana Yashodanandana Brajajana Ranjana Yamuna Tira Vanachari Yamuna Tira Vanachari Jayo Radha Madhava Jayo Kunja Bihari Jayo Radha Madhava Jayo Kunja Bihari Jayo Gopijana Vallabha Jayo Girivaradhari Jayo Girivaradhari Jayo Radha Madhava Jayo Kunja Bihari Jayo Radha Madhava Jayo कुंज बिहारी. When we first started the last reading, we started with the biography of Srila Bhakti Siddhanta, starting with his very early years. So I'm just recapping, but actually, I did check. It came out really well with the previous recording because the flow is exact. I do recommend that if you feel I'm missing stuff and you're missing all the juicy parts, then do go back to the older recording and you'll find all of the earlier information. But I will carry you through because we're starting around, I think, when he's around 30 and we're going to finish. So, well, we discussed how Bhakti Siddhanta came at the deep, uh, heartfelt request of his father Bhakti Vinod, who himself was an erudite scholar, very well acknowledged, spiritual leader and guide, who was who had written so many books, who had on his own done so much for the movement that he is known as the seventh Goswami, because his effort in rediscovering Mayapur Dham and all the places, including the birthplace of Mahaprabhu, was all, and also his contribution to Sankirtan movement, all of it made him a shining star in our Krishna conscious movement. But despite all of his abilities, all of his accomplishments, he still felt like take, he couldn't revive the movement. He couldn't take this Sankirtan yajna out to everybody. And in his deep desire, he prays. He prays to the Lord, saying, "Send me someone who can help continue this journey because I am unable to." And if you remember, Bhakti Vinod Thakur was a eminent, he was a court judge, and he was his job plus his writing, all of his work kept him extremely busy. He had very tight use of his time, and yet he couldn't do more than what he could in those 24 hours. And by his prayer came this wonderful ray of Vishnu, Bhakti Siddhanta, and he was born in Puri. And when they checked his birth chart, it was very clear. I think his grandfather checked his birth chart, was very clearly said that this is a child who will go on to spread Krishna consciousness everywhere. He is certainly an extremely capable child, and on on the strong shoulders of Bhakti Vinod came the responsibility of raising this obviously genius child. This is a person. I mean, you read the early descriptions of Bhakti Siddhanta, you get to hear that this is a child who was mature, extremely mature, calm, focused, had a amazing retention and memory. He could quote from memory things he had learnt or read or seen 50 years back. Such was his power of memory, and from a very young age, he started learning. So, at a very young age, he received beads, he was chanting. His father gave him, I think, Kurmashila to do worship, and Jagannath, and then he had Kurmadev. And his spiritual studies and his regular education both started at a very young age. So, when he was first born, there is this instance of the Jagannath cart stopping in front of the house of Bhakti Vinod Thakur, and they brought the child out, and the garland from Lord Jagannath falls on the child, and that is a sign that he is blessed by the Lords. So, Bhakti Vinod Thakur realizes that his prayers have been answered, and as we watch this child slowly grow, we see a father who when we were reading last time, we were brought to this thought, of how Srila Prabhupada was raised by his father, and how there's so much responsibility on the shoulders of a parent who has a child that is obviously, you know, carrying forward from where they left off, a person with very spiritual, deep spiritual connections. someone who has come to achieve and serve. And then we see how Bhakti Vinod grooms Bhakti Siddhanta from a very young age. And as we read through all these stories of his youth, the his and what shines in most of it is not just his abilities, his great memory and great intelligence, but also his desire to adherence to the truth and principled. Bhaktisiddhanta was extremely principled, like with the mango incident, and he would stick to the truth at any cost, and that would bring him again and again into conflict with his seniors, with the places he goes to. But he was an erudite scholar. His language was many times difficult for the general public to understand because he was really good at writing, and he used words that were not in common jargon, but he was very good at explaining difficult concepts. We discussed the comparison with Srila Prabhupada, where Srila Prabhupada, remember, we talked about how he would break things down for us. And his Guru Maharaj, Srila Bhakti Siddhanta, would take things up for us, you know. And it was so sweet to see the comparison between Guru and Shishya. Bhakti Siddhanta, who inspired and guided Bhakti Vinod, and how he inspired and guided Bhakti Siddhanta, and Bhakti Siddhanta in turn, how he inspired Prabhupada. And we see this amazing collection of their characters and qualities. Today we will look into that. And then as we read, there's one beautiful opportunity for us in reading such wonderful writings by our movement, people in our movement who've written it, like Bhakti Vikas Swami Maharaj, because it gives us this opportunity. Like I said, these books are windows into the person. Now, we have never had a chance, I have never had a chance to meet Srila Prabhupada, obviously not Bhakti Siddhanta, Bhakti Vinod Thakur, but they come to life for us in these books, made with love, devotion, care. The information in these books gives us a chance to open a window and see what kind of a person was this. Our acharyas, who were they? How did they think? What was their approach to Krishna consciousness? What were their instructions? How did Krishna consciousness pass down in lineage for us? What was the process? It's really interesting. And also to see the dynamics between father and son, guru and shishya. It's really interesting. And the dynamics between a Krishna conscious preacher and the general public. And you get to see how Bhakti Siddhanta interacts with the people around him. Of course, time, place, and circumstance. He had a heavier job because at that time there was a lot of people who were representing Krishna consciousness in a wrong way, and it was up to him to straighten it out, so to speak, and represent the process. He would bring the truth and expose all these pseudo Vaishnavas and people who would Sahajiyas and others who would use Krishna and misuse his teachings for their own benefit, and they would misguide the public. So for him was the struggle to bring back and bring back the proper processes, the proper regulations, and train people all over again. And for Bhakti, for our Prabhupada, was the service of spreading it to every town and village. So we see as Bhaktisiddhanta grows up, we notice that he has a penchant for astrology. He's a very good astrologer, and we see how it says if he had just stayed in that, he might have been the greatest astrologer of all time because he had this amazing ability because of his intelligence and his focus to really calculate and find stuff better than everybody else. But we notice that as Bhaktisiddhanta grows up, he even gets the name Siddhanta Saraswati from his abilities. But when he gets to college, he he is at odds with his teachers, his seniors, because he keeps correcting and fixing the truth. If he sees something not working, if he sees something's not right, he stands up and refutes it. And in the process, it ends up that he's always juxtaposed at a the wrong angle. He's always arguing, fighting, and at some point, Bhakti Siddhanta doesn't complete college. He leaves because even though they recognize his genius, his strictness and the way he presents it ends up rubbing people the wrong way. And we read through all that last time. So here is Bhakti Siddhanta, amazing, guided by his father, growing up in Krishna consciousness with all the processes in place. He chants, he's been reading scriptures, he's been introduced to the printing press. His father takes him with him many times on his trips, and we talked about the one time when there was a ghost and they chanted it away. And in the process, Bhakti Siddhanta grows under the tutelage of his father, very, very well cared and managed. But we also see this contrast between Bhakti Vinod Thakur, and you'll see it more today as we read Bhakti Vinod Thakur and his desire to spread this to every town and village, versus Bhakti Siddhanta, who's naturally more inner looking. He's by nature more quiet, more focused, serious. And we see how that plays out where his father time and time again pushes him out there, puts him out there, and makes him go do services and interact and make sure that his service is not just quietly chanting in a corner, but actually going out there and spreading this, being a scion, a person of value to the movement where he's doing. So as we see, as he grows up, he ends up becoming a sub-editor because of his knowledge, his ability to use the language. He becomes a tutor for the governor, I think I remember, and he starts publications. So he does 3 Jyotish publications. He establishes the Sarvasva Chatushpati, which is like a Jyotish school, and then as he keeps going, he gets all these followers. He's running so many things. He's still very young, but extremely capable. He creates an almanac just for Bhakti followers so that they can find all their dates properly, because the other almanacs were not aligned to our requirements. And then from 1897, we see him start doing the Chaturmas. And the Chaturmas Vrat, I think he keeps it all the way down. We see it again and again. Here is an amazingly competent, capable young man, shining, glowing in his own right. He's a nascent genius and a scholar. And we see that in 1892, he was just 18 years of age when he entered Sanskrit college. And then from there, he goes on. And once he comes out of college, he drops out of college, he takes employment. And as he's working for the Maharaja, I think he takes employment. So he becomes a sub-editor of Raja Ratnakara. So, requested by the king of Tripura, Maharaja Veerachandra Dev Varma, to visit the state capital, Bhakti Vinod Thakur goes, and he's accompanied by Bhakti Siddhanta. And the end of his 4 days after his lecture, Siddhanta is offered a job, and he becomes a guide to the young princes, and then he also helps with a lot of publications. And then finally, at one fine time, when the time is right, he meets his spiritual master, and that we see Jagannath Das Babaji Maharaj, and we see the struggle to get initiated, because Maharaj is very particular about not taking disciples. He tries to put him off, he refuses, and then after all of this, noticing Bhakti Siddhanta's resolve, because that's one of his big qualities. He doesn't give up. He's very steady, and he actually appreciates his Guru Maharaj's approach. And finally, he gets his blessings and he takes initiation. Going from there, we see him. What we did was we were reading parts of the book, and through that we were getting more and more insight into the life and times. And we see how he travels. He finally gives up on Jyotish. The last Jyotish debate is the one where he finally says, I'm done. This is not my calling. I know that Jyotish is something I'm good at, and he's been extremely good at it. He has so many students, and he's been running this Jyotish college, but he stops everything, and then he focuses on developing Krishna consciousness. And because of that, he starts traveling. He goes to East Bengal, he goes to South India, and we talked about his travels. And then finally, he decides he goes to Mayapur, and there he decides before he starts, he wants to do 1 billion holy names. So he sits there, very simple Spartan lifestyle, and he starts his chanting, and he finishes it. It takes almost 4 years for him to finish, and he does that. And once he's done with it, then his father wants him to pick up. He starts to help him with printing, and he starts all these magazines, and this has been his life's work. He starts off, and we notice as we've been reading through the passages that his father, one, and Gaur Kishore Das Babaji Maharaj. Oh, did I say Jagannath Das? Sorry, I made a mistake. Gaur Kishore Das Babaji Maharaj, his guru, they both guide him so much along the way. So we stopped last time with the passing of Bhakti Vinod Thakur. So let's go back to that point, and then we will continue from there. The two acharyas depart. So Bhakti Vinod Thakur and Gaur Kishore Das Babaji Maharaj both pass away within months of each other. And it's really difficult for Bhakti Siddhanta because Gurudev used to say that, when it's lonely at the top. I've heard him say that. And I think of that a lot when I think of Bhakti Siddhanta, with both of these people passing in their disappearance. He starts to feel very lonely. So the process of their passing away is also not very easy for him, because, it's they both are powerful entities in their own right, and their passing causes a lot of challenges to come by. So let's read through that. Bhakti Vinod Thakur, while composing Swaniyama Dvadashakam at Godruma, suddenly became severely paralyzed, so much so he could neither speak nor move. And although he was actually in samadhi, occasionally returning to external consciousness at will, his family members took him to Calcutta for treatment, but to no avail. The condition of the paralysis stayed for months, and then it appeared that Bhaktivinoda Thakur was almost going to expire. Pleased at this prospect, certain envious persons propagated that Bhaktivinoda was now reaping karmic reaction. Pained that purely spiritual pastimes of a Mahabhagavat were being likened to the sufferings of ordinary jivas, Siddhanta Saraswati implored Bhaktivinoda Thakur at his bedside, "Please remain with us for some more days to further propagate the gospel of Sriman Mahaprabhu, thereby uplifting the universe. In this way, even these ignorant villains who are now criticizing you may also be benefited." So Bhaktivinoda Thakur, he was there comes a point in all these acharyas' lives where they get to a point where they start to internalize. And it's explained here that actually he's in samadhi, even though externally it looks like he's physically sick or vulnerable. They tend to go inward. And people who don't understand it tend to criticize it, saying, "Oh, you've contracted a disease, or you're physically sick, and that these are all punishments for your misbehavior." But it's not true, because these are very enlightened souls, and these are pastimes. They're not karma. When enacting this Leela of sickness, Bhaktivinoda Thakur was requested by Srila Gaur Kishore Das Babaji Maharaj through a caste Goswami not to remain in Calcutta. He tells him, "Join me in Navadvip, because Calcutta is a place of Kali." And Bhaktivinoda Thakur responds back by telling him, "Where I reside is not the resort of Kali." Sri Narottam Das Thakur has affirmed, "Yata Vaishnava Gana Se Sthana Vrindavana." He says, where a Vaishnava is present, that place becomes Vrindavan. So do not worry about me. Don't worry that I'm with Kali, in a place where Kali holds, holds power. I'm actually, because being a Vaishnava, I'm actually in Vrindavan. And that's such a sweet discussion between the two of them, because Babaji Maharaj is concerned. Jagannath Das Babaji Maharaj is Bhaktivinoda Thakur's Gurudev. So this is Bhakti Siddhanta's Gurudev, who's asking him, why don't you, come and spend. Gaurakishore Das Babaji is asking him to come and spend time here with him. He says, no, I'm okay. I'm fine. Only, he says, most people approach Babaji Maharaj with a lot of their own ideas. They make a show of talking sadhu sangha, but actually they're unwilling to accept any salutary instructions. He reciprocates according to their materialistic outlook and speaks in a manner that cheats them as per their desire. Only when one approaches him with full surrender does Babaji Maharaj open his heart and reveal the truth. Later, Saraswati Siddhanta Thakur reveals the inner meaning of this pastime. Towards the end of his manifest pastimes, upon seeing the dearth of bhakti in society, he talks of his father, he adopted a vow of silence, remaining immersed in Manasi Seva, devotional service performed in meditation. Those fools who in pride considered themselves devotees could not understand this pastime, and thus made offences at the feet of a devotee. Wanting to see a devotee by their own feeble qualifications, they inevitably committed offences, shedding profuse tears on seeing the distress of souls suffering in this world. Sri Bhaktivinoda Thakur ordered me to preach Shuddha Bhakti, to fulfill the mission of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, and for now to follow the tenets of devotional service. In 1913, Bhaktivinoda Thakur sent a requisition from Calcutta to Siddhanta in Mayapur. There are not enough devotees here. Can you send me 2 men? Bhakti Siddhanta acceded, but one of the dispatched men was sent somewhere else, and only one arrived alone in Calcutta, and for some days he served the Thakur. Shortly thereafter, Srila Bhaktivinoda wrote again, stating, "You are my only true Vaishnava son. Quickly free me from this association here. Take me to Godruma." Bhakti Siddhanta arrived in Bhakti Bhavan, but was prevented from taking Bhaktivinoda Thakur because the family members objected, concerned with the aged patriarch's health. Thus, Bhakti Siddhanta was obliged to return home alone. But upon reaching the train station in Calcutta, he was met by Bhaktivinoda Thakur, who had arrived by car, accompanied by the same relatives who had forbidden him to go, but finally yielded to his insistence. During this period, Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati was composing Anubhashya and regularly sending drafts to Bhaktivinoda Thakur for checking. This endeavor pleased the Thakur, who became especially delighted upon perusing Siddhanta Saraswati's comments on Chaitanya Charitamrita 1.1.19. E tine Thakure, tine Moranath. Remember, we read it in the very beginning? Srila Bhaktivinoda Thakur left this world from Bhakti Bhavan on 23rd June 1914. Siddhanta Saraswati was then in Mayapur. Although earlier that day he received news by telegram of Bhaktivinoda Thakur's impending departure, because trains were delayed due to monsoon rains and flooding, he did not reach Calcutta till almost 8 in the night, and a few hours after the Thakur's passing. In the meantime, his other brothers had performed a cremation ceremony. Arriving amid sobbing and wailing, Bhaktisiddhanta found his mother calm and composed, exhibiting no outward signs of grief. Wanting to placate her with meaningful words, he said, Today is one of great happiness, and not the slightest grief. Today our Master has re-entered the eternal pastimes of the Lord. Now it is our duty to remember his eternal position, names, quality forms, and pastimes. Henceforth we will follow in his footsteps even more concentratedly. Sri Siddhanta Saraswati's mother responded, He departed after offering you plenteous blessings. He repeatedly mentioned your firm faith in Shuddha Bhakti and instructed that you should serve Sri Mayapur and propagate the message of Sriman Mahaprabhu. Then Bhaktisiddhanta addresses the gathering of his kinfolk and followers, and he describes the Thakur's transcendental qualities way into the night. He tells them that he is a Vaishnava and therefore we cannot do Smartha rites. Instead, we will follow the Vaishnava directions given in Haribhakti Vilas and Satkriya Saradipika. And accordingly, the disciples of the Thakur perform the remaining rites as appropriate for a Mahabhagavat. On December 27th, Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati establishes a Pushpa Samadhi at Swananda Sukhada Kunj in honor of this most exalted Vaishnava. Siddhanta holds a 3-day remembrance festival there. So, with that, his father passes away. Gaurakishore Das Babaji Maharaj disappeared on 16th November 1915. Several heads of temples had been awaiting his departure in hope of situating his samadhi in their individual mathas to attract pilgrims and thereby increase their own prestige and income. Thus, the competition generated by his passing was intense as it was nasty. A young man named Umapati described the scene. After Babaji Maharaj's departure, there were many opinions and disturbances over who would establish his samadhi. Many came forward and then they argued. We went to Mayapur to fetch Srila Prabhupada, and I was told to go with them. As we crossed the river, we saw Prabhupada coming barefoot, wearing a warm green chadar. With him was Paramananda Brahmachari. It was Chaturmasya, and Prabhupada's hair and beard were long. Seeing him, we prostrated in respect and appraised him of the situation. After crossing the river and arriving at Rani Dharmshala, the Mahants in Navadvip started arguing among themselves about taking Babaji Maharaj's spiritually blissful body for inaugurating his samadhi. So there's always this fight because they feel like if they put Babaji Maharaj in their mutt, then their mutt's value goes up. After all the hullabaloo, Babaji said, Siddhanta Saraswati is not a renunciate. He is not eligible to establish a samadhi for a renunciate. Prabhupada thunderously retorted, I am the only disciple of Paramahamsa Babaji Maharaj. Even though I am not officially a renunciant, I am a celibate brahmachari, and by the grace of Babaji Maharaj, I am not furtively addicted to abominable habits or involved in fornication, as are certain Simon people. If anyone here is a renunciate of truly stainless character, we have no objection to his establishing Babaji Maharaj's Samadhi. He who within the last year or 6 months, 1 month, at least within the last 3 days, had not had any illicit contact with a woman will be able to touch the spiritually blissful body. If anyone else touches it, he will be completely ruined. The police inspector asked Prabhupada how evidence of this could be ascertained, to which Prabhupada replied that he would accept their word. Everyone present was astonished to see those dressed as Babajis turn their backs one by one and quietly walk away. Babaji Maharaj had actually told Bhakti Siddhanta a few months before his departure. He had given him instructions on his samadhi, saying it should be established either in Mayapur or Godruma, but if neither was possible, then his body should be dragged by municipal sweepers through the streets of Kulia and finally thrown into the Ganga. But because of the pressure, Bhakti Siddhanta was now unable to take the form of his Guru Maharaj to Mayapur. Nor could he allow people to drag his body as he had reiterated down the streets. In response to their demand, Bhakti Siddhanta stated, My Sri Gurudeva, whom Krishna Chandra himself feels privileged to carry on his head and shoulders, spoke such humble words to destroy the arrogance of non-devotees. Even though we are fools, inexperienced, and offenders, we shall not be averse to comprehending his actual intention. How greatly was Sri Gaurasundar embellished by dancing, while holding on his lap the spiritually blissful form of Thakur Haridas after his passing. Following in Sriman Mahaprabhu's footsteps, we shall carry the transcendental form of Babaji Maharaj on our heads. So the next day, with his own hands, Bhakti Siddhanta dug out and shaped the Samadhi on the alluvial banks of the Ganga in Kulia, in the vicinity where Babaji Maharaj had performed many bhajans. The site was owned by brothers Ananta and Vanamali Podar, prosperous businessmen. They had given the site, they claimed they donated it, gave up all rights, and personally labored and spent money to help create the Samadhi. But then in a few years, their approach changed, and they started to claim that the Samadhi was actually family property. Ignoring the protests of Srila Siddhanta Saraswati and his followers and sympathizers, the brothers eventually forbade them access to the Samadhi. As a result of these heinous offences, Ananta and Vanamali lost their considerable play and underwent acute domestic problems, later losing both the Samadhi and the land on which it was situated, and they were sent to jail for 6 months. So it wasn't easy to serve his Gurudev after his passing. There were a lot of challenges, but despite it all, Bhakti Siddhanta was able to complete the process and create his Samadhi, only to find out that there again, humans and their desire, their greed, always coming in and causing trouble. But God has a way of fixing problems, and so in the end, they weren't able to hold the land that way. Upon Babaji Maharaj's disappearance, Siddhanta Saraswati inwardly bemoaned, "Now who will chastise me to make me understand the truth as it is?" Having seen many disturbances arise in the Vaishnava community following the Tirobhav of Srila Bhaktivinoda Thakur just 16 months before, feeling disappointment and hopelessness, and keenly suffering the absence of his two muses, Siddhanta Saraswati resolved to keep to himself and desist from speaking Harikatha to others. Although he had commented on 8 of the 11 verses of Anuvriti, which he was composing on Bhaktivinoda Thakur's specific order, he stopped working on it. He lamented, "To whom will I show my articles and books? Who will take pleasure in my writings and encourage me to continue? Who will take pleasure in hearing about the preaching work and the increasing splendor of the Dham and our services to it?" Practically foregoing food and sleep, he remained engaged in intense bhajana while wrestling with a dilemma. His heart reverberated with Srila Bhaktivinoda Thakur's order that he not renounce service to Mahaprabhu, and seeing the mass of people spoiling their valuable human life, simply taking birth and dying without information or interest in the incomparable boons offered by Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, Bhaktisiddhanta was unceasingly contemplating the need to preach. Yet, having experienced the kind of malicious opposition he would have to now face if he spoke the truth, he was reluctant to return to public life. Then one day a gust of wind blew before him an extract of Sri Chaitanya Charitamrita, wherein Lord Chaitanya instructs Sanatan Goswami to compose transcendental literature, renovate forgotten holy places, institute service to Lord Krishna, and propagate Bhakti Rasa. Taking this as divine indication, but feeling depressed and incapable, Siddhanta Saraswati pondered, "I have no public support, no wealth, learning, or the intelligence required to awaken interest in this populace. How can I convey to the inhospitable world the pure teachings of Sri Chaitanya and establish the manobhishta of my gurus?" Reading through this, we realize I found it gave us an opportunity to see the human side of these great acharyas. It's not like they've never felt loss or they never felt lost. You know, uh, just like any other human being, here's Bhakti Siddhanta, who's missing his guiding lights, who's struggling with the instructions because he realizes that the way ahead is going to be very challenging. Just getting the opportunity to create their samadhis was so difficult. And even though he's an erudite scholar, Krishna consciousness comes naturally to him. He's a very advanced level and senior, preacher. He doesn't feel like doing Harikatha, so he's slightly depressed, and he's not sure how he's going to go ahead. He feels the road ahead to be too. The weight of the work given to him starts to he starts to feel it, and then at this point, suddenly, one night at Yogapit, in a dreamlike revelation, he saw approaching him from the east the Panchatattva, the 6 Goswamis of Vrindavan, Srila Jagannath Das Babaji Maharaj, Srila Bhakti Vinod Thakur, Srila Gaurakishore Das Babaji Maharaj, and numerous other great devotees of Lord Chaitanya. They told him, "Saraswati, why worrying? Begin the task of establishing Shuddha Bhakti. Distribute Gauravani universally. Expand service to Gaur Nam, Gauradham, and Gaurakam. With unbreached enthusiasm, broadcast Bhakti Siddhanta. We are eternally with you, ready to help. The support of unlimited people, immeasurable opulence, and boundless scholarship awaits the blessings to serve your mission. All will manifest when required. Come forward with full strength to distribute the message of Mahaprabhu's Premadham, Premadharma throughout the globe. No worldly hindrance or menace will be able to obstruct this undertaking of yours. We are forever with you." Next morning, the few young disciples who had gathered round him saw for the first time in many days his face, refulgent in happiness. He related to them the vision that he had seen, and before long he resumed working on Anuvriti, and thenceforth his avidity for preaching was fully rekindled and unretractable. So even though he goes through overwhelming loss and he feels challenged in his darkest moments, guiding light comes for him. And he gets this vision of everybody talking to him, encouraging him, and telling him everything will come. Just go ahead, It has all been arranged. And with the strength of that vision, here is Bhakti Siddhanta getting ready for the battle ahead. So, with the instruction, when Bhakti Vinod Thakur passes away, he leaves Bhakti Siddhanta with a few instructions. Let's look at them. He says, the worldly people are proud of their aristocratic birth and cannot attain the real aristocracy. Therefore, they attack pure Vaishnavas, claiming that they have taken birth in low class families because of their sins, and thus they commit offenses. How do we rectify the situation? He says, rectify the situation. Rectification is to institute Daiva Varnashrama Dharma. And Bhakti Siddhanta, you have started to do that. Know it to be the real service to the Vaishnavas. Due to lack of Shuddha Bhakti Siddhanta Prachar, all manner of bad theories and instructions are being carried out by pseudo sampradayas, sahajiyas, and ativadis. Crush them, crush these anti devotional concepts, and then present proper prachar and achar. So he says, try to begin parikrama of Navadvip Dham as soon as possible so that everybody can receive Krishna Bhakti. Diligently ensure service in Sri Mayapur. Make sure service is started permanently and establish it, and it becomes more resplendent every day. Do not do nirjana bhajan. So that's the father telling him again, don't go quietly to some corner and start chanting. I need you to go out there to serve, to preach, to spread. Bhakti Siddhanta, genuine service to Srila Mayapur is not nirjana bhajan. It is to establish a printing press and to propagate devotional books and namahata. Do not for your own sake undertake nirjan bhajan and thus impede preaching and services to Sri Mayapur. So all these instructions he has left his son, knowing fully well his nature. And when I see the father and son interact, it reminds me a lot of Yasdev and Shukadev Goswami, and how, fathers and sons, it's such a heavy burden having these illustrious sons and trying to keep them, in the right path. But it's so sweet, eternally sweet, these pastimes. When I am no longer present, take care to serve your dear Mayapur Dham. This is my special instruction to you. People who are like animals can never attain devotion. Never accept their advice. But do not let them know this, either directly or indirectly. I have a special desire to propagate the importance of books such as the Srimad Bhagavatam, Sat Sandarbha, and Vedanta Darshana. Now you assume the responsibility. Mayapur will prosper if you inaugurate an educational institution. Never try to amass knowledge or money for your own gratification, sense gratification. They should be acquired only for Krishna's service. Never take bad association, either for money or any personal interest. So this is the list of all of his instructions, and having received them, Bhaktisiddhanta takes sannyas. And as he takes sannyas, now Bhaktisiddhanta sannyas is also unusual because he doesn't go to anybody to take the sannyas. He doesn't find anybody qualified. So what he does, he inaugurates it by taking sannyas on Gaur Jayanti, March 27th. Having spent the previous day incessantly chanting Harinam with his head covered with a cloth, and seeing no one suitable to act as his sannyasi guru, Sri Siddhanta Saraswati accepts sannyas by taking a tridanda and sitting in meditation in front of a picture of Gaura Kishore Das Babaji Maharaj. Thus, at the age of 44, Siddhanta Saraswati became Srila Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Goswami Maharaj. And consequently, his disciples, well-wishers and friends, overwhelmed with grief, just as Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's associates did on his taking sannyas. They were all crying and wailing. But then there's this comparison between Mahaprabhu's sannyas and his sannyas. Now, Mahaprabhu, the way he lived and then he took sannyas, of course, the beautiful features of his face and his hair, to give it all up and become so simple and become a sannyasi who's not attached to anything, of course, it breaks their hearts. But not quite with Bhakti Siddhanta, because as you remember, he was trained to do this. He was on the path. Not much change in him. The sannyas was more of a process than an actual change in his countenance. So, he establishes the Chaitanya Mutt in Mayapur on the day he takes sannyas. And he reveals service to the deities Gandharvika Giridhari along with the deity of Lord Chaitanya, before whom he has performed his vow of chanting a billion names. So he starts the service for the deities, he opens the mutt, and he starts his prachar. And when we see that, we notice that he is up with this question, will where should he go? And he chooses to build his the prachar, to do his prachar, build his movement in Calcutta. So there's this question: why Calcutta? Why would he not just do it in Mayapur? And he says, well, there's this Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur already had a base in Mayapur, the most important place in the universe, and was committed to developing it. But he felt that when it comes to preaching, he needed to preach in Calcutta. In those days, Mayapur was remote and surrounded by jungle, whereas Calcutta was in a multitudinous and fashionable metropolis. It was a metropolis throbbing with cultural and intellectual verse. When what it was said in those days, what Bengal thinks today, others will think tomorrow. And Calcutta was the fulcrum of a Bengal and an India immersed in tradition, yet tipping towards the new. An India not only befuddled about her own culture, but moreover exposed to modern breeds of bemusement. So it was Indian culture at that time was at a crossroads where a lot of new ideas and concepts were coming in. And at this point, the British rule, was there, and both British and Indians alike, they were looking at, bodily differences and also nationalities, a lot of things. There was churning of a lot of concepts and ideas, and he felt that he should be there. That's where preaching should be happening. So he tried to start this base. And as he builds, the story goes, and as he builds this base for the Gaudiya Mutt in number 1, Ulta Dingi Junction Road. The Sri Gaudiya Mutt is opened right there. And that's how the rapid expansion starts. He's blessed, remember? He's blessed that everything will come as and when he needs it. So he also tells his disciples, slowly from Altadanta Junction, it builds. And when they take Altadingi Junction, they take it at a very high rent. And his disciples tell him, Maharaj, how are we going to afford it? He says, don't worry, preach and money will come. And they get started. And in that process, we notice that a lot of people start coming to him. And his preaching methodology, you know he tends to travel a lot for preaching. So then he there's an East Bengal trip that he does, almost 1920, 21, 22, and 23. And there, he wherever he goes, he sees this obstacle. People are god conscious, but they're not quite well guided. They're usually misguided, and their exposure and their style of praying and worshipping are all not appropriate. So he ends up having to, you know, uh, co- he has to fight his way through with all these pseudo gurus and bogus gurus, the Sahajiyas, fish eating Vaishnavas, all of these people, and then the East Bengal Hindus, with their natural faithfulness, ended up misplacing their trust. And they have all been initiated, and they are in the coils of all these bogus Vaishnavas. And for him to get them out of the situation, he had to literally pronounce war. He had to go up, argue, represent the case. And because he was doing that, people started to become hostile towards him. So there are these examples of how Bhakti Siddhanta sends his disciples out. One morning, a gentleman hosting the Gaudiya Mutt curtly told them, please leave by afternoon. So his disciple Tirtha Maharaj dispatches a telegram to Srila Saraswati Thakur telling him of the crisis. And Bhakti Siddhanta replies back. So these people are preaching in East Bengal. He sent them there. He tells them, if necessary, survive by drinking the water of the Buri Ganga, but do not stop distributing the teachings of Lord Chaitanya. Saraswati Thakur quickly pens and prints a tract titled A Submission to the Residents of Dhaka, which greatly helps the cause of his embattled representatives. And gradually the Gaudiya Mutt's voice starts to be heard, and some educated young men of East Bengal came forward to join. As we keep going, we recognize of all the educated men who came and joined, there was Srila Prabhupada who comes in too. But in general, when we look at it, we realize that it's not easy expanding the movement. Everywhere they went, they had to it was tooth and nail. They really had to fight their way through. There was so much opposition and resistance, and that was a real challenge for them. Okay, so just a second, let me go back. um Not sure if I can inform her. Okay. So as we keep going through that, as we keep going through that, we notice we come to these points where, like in Dhaka, Bhakti Siddhanta establishes a mutt, and he's looking for a mutt there, and they end up showing him a roomy space. But what happens is that the person there, when they give him the room, they tell him that this place is actually it's haunted. And then we remember back when Bhakti Vinod Thakur took his son, the same situation happened. But Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati says, that's perfectly fine. We'll still take the house. And he takes it and he installs deities and runs a major festival. And there's profuse distribution of Mahaprasad and huge Sankirtan in the city because he has never feared ghosts, and he has witnessed very early in life the power of the pure chanting of the holy names. So because of that, he's able to put his foothold in Dhaka and spread it. So I'm going to just for a second stop the share and then restart it because there we go. Okay. So around 1921-23, we notice that he's having a health crisis. His health deteriorates really bad. He's asked to move back and recoup. He almost passes away because he's having a lot of bodily strain. He's been straining himself, traveling a lot, doing a lot of pravachan, and with his debilitated health, Saraswati Thakur's addiction to glorifying Hari cannot be could not be allayed. So he's constantly trying to do more, but his body is suffering, so he ends up having to take a break. But he doesn't stay quiet for long. By around 1923, with the inauguration of a new temple in March, he establishes the Gaudiya printing works in Calcutta. So you can see his fast pace is taking a toll on his health, but he's not willing to stop because he's really driven. And because of the expansion, the way the movement is spreading, he doesn't have time to stop. And it is true, it's blessed. So there are so many things he gets to do. He starts the printing press, and then in 1924-25, we see that he starts the Vyas Puja performance. He starts the Vyas Puja ceremonies. The first being on 24th February 1924 in the Gaudiya Mutt, the first annual Vyas Puja of Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati. And then he sets the standard of how the puja is to be done. And then as we go along, we notice that he also gets into trouble because of all these things. The caste Goswamis get very angry with him when he stands up and he speaks up and he says that they are not doing it the right way. He exposes them. So one time there is this attack on him that happens, and his disciples, everybody who are there, they get beaten up. There's blood on the streets, but luckily because of the blessings of Mahaprabhu and the acharyas, he nobody dies, and the police step in and they help. So it's a pretty tumultuous time for them, even though they're growing very very big. And finally, we see that they build the Bagh Bazaar temple. So the Bagh Bazaar temple is their thing, the thing that they wanted to do. Uh, there we go. Yes. So the Bagh Bazaar temple in 1928 is their biggest thing. They get the support from people. There's money coming in. There are sponsors, and this big Bagh Bazaar temple. There's a picture of it coming up later. That's built, and then Bhaktisiddhanta travels. Again, he goes to Assam, South India, Triveni, and in Triveni also he opens a mutt. So there are mutts opening everywhere, even in South India. Even though he goes, his programs get bigger, and as we see, everything is growing. But as things start to grow, there's troubling undercurrents coming in. And this was what we couldn't cover last week. This is what people wanted to cover. And I thought, okay, let's cover this. So here we are. The mutt is growing. So look at the size of that mutt, Gaudiya mutt in Bagh Bazaar. Beautiful, huge temple and a huge space. And where money starts to flow in, trouble slowly follows. Up until around 1930, when the marble temple in Bagh Bazaar was opened, most devotees who joined the mission were serious about spiritual life. The mood was buoyant and lively. But while preaching, temple construction and other devotional activities continued unabated, lethargy, backbiting, and prejudicial propensities gradually started to come in. Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur saw seeds of worldly attachment take root in the very institution he found for expelling the iniquity from the world. So he started to lament. He said, "Our ashram is a joint mess, a place simply for eating and sleeping." Many Matvasis became increasingly idle, their days largely consumed by cooking, eating, washing pots, then resting, then again rising, cooking, eating, washing pots, and so on. He says, "Sometimes I eat nicely, sometimes not. I see this and that, dress as I like, and I have no worries at all." He would quote Bhaktivinoda Thakur's statement, "I'm so carefree that I never consider that one day I will have to give up this body." And he warns his disciples that to collect funds and convert them into stool and urine, basically to use it for sense gratification, is to live like monkeys, and this is not the business of the Gaudiya Mutt. So Bhakti Siddhanta starts to notice the cracks, and he's not happy, but as we read through, we realize it's very difficult to control. So he starts to there is this situation where somebody embezzles money, and then there are situations where he's frustrated that they're not focused on Hari Bhajan. Actually, they're more focused on the funds coming in and going out, and the purchases and the management. And then, despite bewailing the plight of the organization he founded, Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati never commented despairingly about it, for he did not accept that the quintessential Gaudiya Math could be polluted by the misbehavior of delinquent members. He delineated the difference between genuine disciples and motivated followers, between the real, transcendental Gaudiya Math and its so called outer semblance. People started to notice that the lectures were getting a little watered down and there was not much focus, and they did comment to him, but there was only so much he could do, and he never spoke ill of it. But he did try in many ways to instruct his disciples. He would comment about it in his lectures. He would try to tell them. He says, "My plea to all of you is to unite and serve the Lord in a spirit of friendship and cooperation. Have the same goal in your hearts. Ekaki amar nahi paya bala. Alone I obtain no strength. It is working together that we can serve." But all of this is going over their heads. Just as money and power corrupt, and then these leaders, they end up with having two factions in the organization, where there are two types of leaders, one who's more focused on Shastra and Kirtan, and the other who's managing the temple, managing the money and the system. And then it gets to a point where there is this rivalry between the two people. And Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati is trying dynamically to expand his preaching efforts. He continuously tours extensively throughout India, from the Himalayas and Assam down to the southern tip, and he goes from Bengal to the Arabian Sea, desiring to spread Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's teachings. But at the same time, back home, things are not good at the mutt. So, as we see the story progressing, we notice that all of these disturbances, they weigh on his heart, and all the Matvasis, he tries to send instructions. He sends an instruction to the Matvasis, trying to give them a list of do's and don'ts, which somehow might be able to control their behavior. But most of the time, he's noticing that the disciples are not interested in following his instructions. Even though he tells them, they're not willing to. So, with all this argument and fight, Bhaktisiddhanta starts to realize that many have lost their way. And in a sense, he starts to say that I have only Kanishtas. I have very young disciples, not many who are enlightened enough to get to the next level. These people are more connected with their, with the nitty gritties of running a business and managing money, and they've forgotten the real purpose for which they came to the mutt. And it is upsetting for him, but at the same time, he keeps doing his service. He's out there spreading the holy name and doing his very, very best. And he does comment. So finally, on his 65th anniversary, there's a big Vyas Puja function, and he's there and he attends that. And then in Gaya in 1935, he goes there and he preaches, he speaks to everybody. But that is about almost closing in on his passing away. We notice in his winding up when he passes, when time comes, he starts hinting to his followers much ahead that you will have very little of this coming forth. Your time is less. Please take what you can get now. And these hints he passes through. So, hints of departure, let me just read for that part for you. For several years, pre- uh, early to his passing, Srila Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati often spoke of the inevitability of his passing by referring to the residual portion of my life, the last stage of my life. I don't have much time left. I don't know how much longer Krishna will keep me here. And then he speaks of it in his lectures. He tells his disciples, like one time he tells them, the sun is about to set. You won't get delicious Mahaprasad like this in the future. Such a function will no longer be held. And in this way, he keeps hinting of his, his passing away. He says, our span of life is short. Our life will be crowned with success if the body wears out while constantly speaking Harikatha. And that's what he does. He ends up spending all of his time and energy in spreading the holy names. And at one point, accompanied by 150 to 200 disciples, devotees, Bhaktisiddhanta observes the Kartik Vrat in 1935. And during this period, he reveals the depth of his dissatisfaction to his householder disciple Abhaya Charnaravinda, Srila Prabhupada, who had come to visit him. He laments that even in his presence, his foremost disciples are quarreling over trifling arrangements for fleshly comfort, causing him much anguish. Bhaktisiddhanta tells Abhay, fire will burn, Agun Jwalibe, indicating that a conflagration of party interests will erupt in the Gaudiya Math and destroy it. When we were living in a rented house at Ultadingi, he said, if we could collect 200 or 300 rupees, we were living very nicely. We were happier then. But since getting this marble palace in Bagh Bazaar, there has been friction among our men. Who will occupy this room? Who will occupy that room? Who will be the proprietor of this room? Everyone is planning in different ways. Better to take the marble from the walls, sell it, and use the money to print books. On November 1935, Saraswati Thakur revealed services to deities in Kunja Bihari Mutt at Radhakund. 2 days later, he established the Pushpa Samadhi of Bhakti Vinod Thakur in a separate building. So, only by overcoming bitter opposition from the resident Babajis was the Gaudiya Mutt able to acquire these places for worship at Radhakund. Bhakti Saranga Prabhu's go getting nothing impossible pluck played a crucial role in the process. So he's explaining how even in Radhakund, to get these places was uphill. For Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati, it has always been uphill. He had to fight the fight everywhere, and he did it. Uh, in February 1936, the Vyas Puja was celebrated over 5 days, and then after that, he started to get weaker and weaker. Back in Calcutta, the prominent doctor told him he should cut down his speaking and proposed that, he should just take it easy. For which Bhakti Siddhanta, of course, gave him another discourse for almost an hour. and and the disciples started to joke that the doctor came to treat the Guru, but the Guru ended up treating him instead. So, observing Gurudev's failing health, his disciples also started to ask who would be the next Acharya. They would earlier complain that all his preaching, so I had put there Guru embezzling, and the concept was that they were complaining that Gurudev is using too much of his money for preaching efforts and not leaving enough for the running of the temple. And the things that Bhakti Siddhanta had to hear, the arguments, the complaints, and the sheer, for lack of a better word, disrespect that sometimes he had to tolerate. It's just amazing. And there's this beautiful picture of him painted during Chaturmash when he's much, much older. And it's just so pretty. And the thought, the look on his face and his eyes express, how slowly he starts to go inwards because it's time. And his thoughts move inward and he starts to close down. Towards the end, he makes sure that his disciples go to England for that preaching mission. He sends them off. Then he arrives in Puri after sending them off, and people tell him in Puri that Maharaj, you've put a lot of effort in all these other places. Why don't you put more effort in Puri? And then Maharaj replies, the time of my departure has come. What can I do now? There were other signs that he was preparing to leave. His mood was increasingly withdrawn and meditative, and he openly, repeatedly vented his inner longing to reside at the foot of Govardhan. His songs, his preaching, his lectures would start to say this more and more often. On 23rd December, 8 days before leaving the world, Bhaktisiddhanta instructed in a weak, halting voice that his devotees should assemble at his bedside, and he gave them important instructions. So, his last address, he gave it to them about 8 days before. So, he speaks very beautifully. We don't have the time for it, but he speaks very beautifully. And then phone calls start to come from everywhere, even from England. Everybody's worried what is going to happen. Gurudev is not feeling very well. Finally, uh, on in December 31st, Bhakti Siddhanta starts to ask his disciples to sing. And then Sridhar Maharaj sings, and then after him, you know, Navina Krishna, Vidyalankar Prabhu starts to sing, and then the bhajans are started, and everybody stays by his side. They don't want to leave. And finally, the next morning, January 1st, he leaves his physical body, and that is with the passing of Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati. It's very difficult for disciples when Guru passes away, but there's really, you know, he gave his all to his last minute, just like our Prabhupada. So it is very bittersweet. Srila Prabhupada later summarizes the passing of his Gurudev Bhakti Siddhanta in this statement. He says, Srila Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Thakur came into this world to execute the mission of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. So he executed it. And when it was required, he left this place and went to another place to do the same business. What a sweet statement from a disciple about his Guru, both of whom have served the same master, done the same business, and left to continue to do it somewhere else. Such a sweet one. So with that, the biography ends, and then we have all these little notes about Bhakti Siddhanta. There are a lot of little vignettes, short stories, notations about his quality and character, and it speaks. So I will just pull a few of them, and we'll wrap up for today. So we have these characteristics of a Vaishnava. The character of all Vaishnavas is profound and unfathomable, yet each manifests divine traits in different ways. So Ramananda Raya fully conquered lust. Damodar Pandit was famed for objective criticism. Haridas Thakur personified forbearance. Sanatan Goswami and Rupa Goswami were exceptionally meek and humble. Srila Saraswati Thakur was focused, tenacious, and staunch. Like his guru, Sri Gaura Kishore Das Babaji Maharaj, he was steadfast in renunciation and bhajana. Austerity, that was his ideal. So he would always focus on being the ideal acharya. He would keep very high standards. And it was required at that time because he was there to spread Krishna consciousness in a time where there were a lot of pseudo gurus and people who were misleading the population. So he had to be above reproach. He had to have a very high standard, and he did maintain it. It suited his way of work. So if you see him in Prabhupada, you notice that he, at that time, place, and circumstances, had found he would be very particular about interactions. He wouldn't interact with the women alone. He had much higher level of expectations with his disciples. The rules were more strict, and that's just how it is. You know, that's how Srila Bhakti Siddhanta would work. Considering Yukta Vairagya, it says common people would challenge Bhakti Siddhanta. What kind of sadhu are you? With all these nice items, conveyances, horses, and elephants? And Bhakti Siddhanta and his men would say, the best thing in the world should be employed in Krishna's service, no one else's, which means they should be used exclusively by sadhus, for only sadhus use everything for Krishna. Bhakti Siddhanta was never a slave of pragmatism. He was an exemplary Yukta Vairagya person. And despite living amid plenty, he had no personal interest in comfort or finery, always remaining, uh, it was a very Spartan, simple life. Thus, he established that a devotee who desires not even a paisa for his own indulgence could, for the service of Krishna, spend crores of rupees and live in opulence. He explained how it was possible for devotees to accept all facilities and yet be totally renounced. and this is far superior to the slothful quiescent living in the name of Nirjan Bhajan. So he says, I understand that a certain devotee has decided to construct a thatched cottage for the sake of improving his sadhana, thus placing obstacles to the propagation of Hari Kirtan in Madras. Even if he continues with such activities of sense enjoyment for many lifetimes, Harikatha will simply go on without cessation. But it is improper that anyone's inclination to serve the Lord and his devotees be attenuated even up to the last breath. I am not in favor of building a thatched cottage within a city as a residence for sannyasis. For that purpose, a Himalayan cave would be better, or one could do bhajan by becoming a tree like the Yamalarjuna. Hari Kirtan is the only necessity in this valuable human life. It is not required to place blocks to preaching by citing Nirjan Bhajan as an excuse for an inactive life, or accepting meaningless poverty on the plea of renunciation, rather than residing in a cottage with the intention of hidden sense enjoyment. Better to immediately begin performing every endeavor for Krishna's pleasure. One can attain Hari Bhajan and the mercy of Mahaprabhu by attempting to reveal and preach the glories, while internally cultivating the Vairagya described in Prarthana and Prema Bhakti Chandrika. So that was his approach. He speaks about seeing Krishna because somebody comes up to him and they ask him, a zamindar was granted a private meeting and he asks Bhakti Siddhanta, have you seen Bhagwan? Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati asks, what is the use if I say I have or I haven't seen? As long as you do not know how to see Godhead, any statement about my seeing Him cannot benefit you. You must learn how to see God. Otherwise, anyone can tell you they have seen the Supreme Lord and you will be hoodwinked. The Zamindar was not satisfied. He repeatedly asked, have you seen? Have you seen God? Bhakti Siddhanta stuck to his point. Without knowing who is the Supreme and the authorized process for seeing Him, any such declaration, I have seen God, will only serve to deceive you. Pursuant to this point, he explained that without lacerating all Kudarshan by Sudarshan, wrong philosophers and correct philosophy, no one can attain Bhagavan Darshan, which is the audience of Bhagavan. Shortly after this closing, so these pastimes are all, the book is completely interspersed with these kind of beautiful pastimes and stories that highlight the way in which he would behave, as an acharya. What was his standards? What was his character? What were his qualities? And how did he interact? And it's really amazing to watch. So this is the Gaudiya Mutt logo, and I got this really nice breakdown on the logo, so I thought I could share that with you. At one point it says, designed by Srila Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Thakur, the Gaudiya Mutt logo depicts the Bhagavata mark, path of devotion centered on Shravanam and Kirtanam, culminating in Raga Bhakti, and Pancharatrika mark, functioning side by side. So if you see here, the right side we have Radha and Krishna, and the words that are written inside, it says, is Devanagari script, Sanskrit Devanagari or Bengali. The both of them I think are being used in this. Here I see only Sanskrit, but it says both. So the right side represents Bhagavata or Raganuga marg. The left, where they are sitting on the throne, that represents Pancharatrika or Vaidhi marg. In the top segment stands Lord Chaitanya. His hand is upraised, encouraging everyone to join Kirtan. To his left is the Srimad Bhagavatam. Below 3 o'clock position stand Radha Krishna and the word Raga signifying Raga Marg. Beneath them is the printing press, right there with the Brihad Mridanga. It's got the Mridanga there. So it's a combination, being the chief sadhana for Raganuga Bhaktis. At the bottom is the tilak with the word Guru and Gaudiya. To the left are the bell, the word Archanam, and a ghee lamp. So this combination comes towards Vaidhi. So because of this, there is this connection. Within the 6 triangles forming a star at the center are words denoting the 6 prominent opulences of the Supreme, which is basically Yash, Sri, Jnanam, Vairagyam, Aishwaryam, and Virya. So it's the 6 opulences that are written. The center is the Nama, Lord, the chanting of the holy names. So written in the center of the star is Om Nam. Om is generally taken as a non-specific sound. Nam is a specific name of the Absolute Truth, the personality of God, it's Sri Krishna. So regarding the Gaudiya Mutt logo, a Pandit once asked Srila Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Thakur, all the depictions are traditionally Indian except the printing press. Why have you kept this foreign item inside your logo? Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur answered, anything used for Lord Chaitanya's kirtan is neither foreign nor Indian, but aprakrita. When used in Krishna's service, the press is as sacred as the arti paraphernalia or the khol and the kartals. It also talks about the daily, the daily life of the devotees and what they used to do. Um, I'm just going to get back to the regular screen so that I can bring you back to the page. Yeah. So it talks about diet, talks about begging and the concept of begging. So a lot of things that Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Goswami Maharaj covers, and by reading these stories, we get to understand the thought process of these Vaishnavas and also to understand the time, place, and circumstance in which they were preaching and why so many standards were set at that time, and then we get to compare it with how Srila Prabhupada came and what was the time, place, and circumstance in which Srila Prabhupada stayed, and how these two things affected the way that they did their bhajan, the way that they did their prachar, and we can get to see all this and compare. So we did have a few more stories, but we're almost at the end of time, and it talked about Bhakti Siddhanta's diet, what he used to eat, and then before they talk about it, everywhere they put these notes saying that discussing preferred foods of a Mahabhagavat should not lead one to adjudge him as an ordinary person with likes and dislikes dictated by the modes of material nature. A pure devotee is devoid of mundane exploitive spirit. His enjoyment of Mahaprasad is of a wholly different nature than the perverted sense pleasure of conditioned souls. A pure devotee's happiness is based on non different form and wholly infused with the intrinsic attitude of service to his worshipable Lord. This transcendental existence is reality for those who experience it and worshipable for those who aspire for it, yet remains ever inconceivable to persons whose outlook is perverted by a deep envy of Krishna. So sometimes, we want to discuss all these things about, but it's better read. Better read alone in the peace and quiet of your space. There were some stories about Guru and his disciples, which were really, really sweet. So I had saved that and I wasn't able to read them last time. I think if we have a little bit of time, I'll read one or two for you so that you can get a taste for it. Where were we? Just a second, because I have to change books. During the course of his preaching career, Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati accepted approximately 3,000 disciples, mostly from Bengal, Orissa, and Assam. Since a number of his mutts had only 3 or 4 inmates, probably he had between 500 to 1,000 brahmachari disciples and somewhat less than 5,000 grihastha disciples, including those who had taken only Harinam. So that was his spread of disciples. Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati did not necessarily concur with these notions of seniority. He wouldn't like this concept of somebody being junior or somebody being senior. Let me just get that. Only upon receiving Diksha would a Gaudiya Math devotee be considered a full-fledged disciple of Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati, with the suffix Das added to his name. Diksha conferred Brahmanical status, entitling the recipient to perform deity worship and priestly rituals. For these reasons, being Diksha was taken as superior to being Harinam. And as a general rule, junior devotees should offer dandavat to and behave respectfully to seniors, who would reciprocate by affectionate dealings and giving guidance. Seniority was determined especially by the number of years invested in the mission, and those with Diksha were regarded a notch above the Harinam Ashritas. Devotees were quite conscious of who had been initiated before or after them. And Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati was not a big fan of this. So that's what he's explaining. At Sri Gaudiya Math, Kunja Bihari Prabhu once arranged that the Diksha sit for taking Mahaprasad in a separate line from those who were merely Harinam Ashrita. When Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati saw this, he remarked, "The Dikshita are inferior to the Harinam Ashrita. They don't believe that the name and the named are non-different. For them, deity worship is required." So he was telling them that once you become Diksha, actually you need more work, you need more service because you have less faith in the holy name. He has a very nice way of putting it to his disciples. Srila Saraswati Thakur was solicitous for both the spiritual and physical welfare of his Shishyas. Had he not been, few could have left their homes, for Indian families are traditionally tight knit, especially Bengali mothers are gushingly doting and coddling to their sons. But Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Maharaj was more affectionate than a million mothers. Many disciples, if feeling disturbed or discouraged, experienced immediate dissipation of their cares simply by entering into his presence, and immediately derived renewed inspiration, enthusiasm, and confidence. Sometimes, when he noticed Shishyas looking pained or depressed, he would affectionately speak Krishna Katha to them and rid them of all their distress. And whenever he left a place, even for a few days, his sincere disciples' hearts ached in separation, each longing for his swift return. All of you should finish your business in this lifetime. Why wait for another? Become fully Krishna conscious and go back to God at this very time. Don't risk waiting for another life, for there is no certainty. Sri Saraswati Thakur's general habit was to indicate a desire rather than command a disciple to fulfill it. For example, often with his magazine editing staff, he would discuss in detail philosophical points and rebuttals of opposing theories. And while it was understood he was outlining a draft for an article, he was more likely to say, "It would be good if something were written," rather than ordering them to get it done. For his personal needs also, he communicated by indication rather than verbally asking. For instance, he would look pointedly at his empty glass to convey that he wanted water. His intimate disciples were familiar with these gestures and would act accordingly without having to be told. Bhaktisiddhanta became perturbed when errant disciples left the mission and lapsed into their former ways. In some cases, he sent other devotees to try to reclaim their association. He became so heartbroken upon hearing of the apostasy of a sannyasi disciple that he began to cry, appealing to Mahaprabhu. Why did you give me the inspiration to award that soul sannyas if you were not prepared to protect him from Maya? I have no power. I am helpless. I resign. I will no longer do this service. Although deeply disappointed, after some time he adjusted his feelings and again resolved to continue the preaching tussle. Once Srila Bhaktisiddhanta travelled with an entourage to install deities at a new mutt. Although pleased with the construction and preparations of the festival, he noted the absence of one brahmachari disciple who had been residing there and inquired about him. The devotees related that the brahmachari had been misbehaving with a neighboring woman, and one night, after being severely revealed by his senior god brothers, he had decamped with all his belongings. They were sorry that he was gone, but being busy with preparations for the temple opening, they had no time to go search for him. Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur sorrowfully commented, "It is difficult to bring a person from the torpor of Maya into the realm of devotion. After eons of floundering in the waves of worldly distress, a rare, fortunate soul might at last approach the shore. To again push him back into the ocean is most heinous. A jiva came to us, yet somehow we have sent him back to suffer. That one soul means more to me than all these buildings and arrangements that you have made." On hearing this, his disciples also became remorseful. Suddenly, Hayagriva Prabhu said, "I know where to look for him." One day, a devotee's watch broke, and he immediately repaired it. He must be working in a watch shop. The devotees then scoured the city and finally found their absconding god brother repairing watches in the back room of a shop. He began crying and saying, "Krishna has answered my prayer. I have been miserable since I left the mutt, but I was too embarrassed to return. I have been praying to Krishna day and night that by any means he again bring me to him." The devotees responded, "Yes, you will have to come back because Guru Maharaj is greatly missing you." Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati was delighted to see his lost disciple, who became overwhelmed by the compassion of his inconceivably merciful master. I will stop there. You can keep hearing, you can keep reading. The heart never tires of these stories, and there's more than enough for us to keep reading. But I think we got the idea. Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Maharaj was an amazing person, and I was very, very grateful to get this opportunity to read about him from these books. Um, I felt bad that the flow was not exact from part one to part two, but I was searching for the notes in the book, and it took some time. So I do apologize if in the beginning you felt a little, it felt a little abrupt. But I do hope you enjoyed all these parts and portions from the story. Um, this is the Bhakti Siddhanta Vaibhava. It comes in 3 book volume, and it's written by Bhakti Vikas Swami Maharaj. So, if you're interested, then you can get a copy for yourself and read it. It's a great opportunity to hear about these acharyas because otherwise, who else will tell us, right? And these are authorized books, so they're safe. The information in them is reliable. So, if you would love to read more, then I recommend getting a copy for yourself. But other than that, we stop now today. Thank you so much for encouraging me and patiently listening. We conclude the reading of Bhakti Siddhanta Vaibhava. Hi, Krishna.
Haribol, Santa Mataji. Thank you
Thank you so much, Prabhu.
for a very delightful of Bhakti Bhagavad and Bhakti Siddhanta. I think
Hold
we
on, I think.
probably trying to say something, but
I don't think it's working though. I'm not getting voice.
yeah, we're not getting voice. Okay, see,
Yeah.
now see muted.
Can I say something, Bhakti? Can you hear?
Yes, Mataji, we can hear you.
Oh, okay. Because I could send you some chat on the chat, and I don't
Oh,
know.
chat, text. Hold on, let me see. Um, yeah, it's Ultadanga. I wanted to ask Gurudev because Gurudev always says Ultadanga, but here in the book it's with eyes.
That must be a mistake, Mataji, because it's English.
I know. I couldn't figure out if it was a mistake in the book,
Yeah, the
but
Dana,
it's been happening at a lot of places in the book. It wasn't just one typing error. So I thought I should research this a little bit more before I commit.
because the T means a boat, and Dana means the coast, and so it is on Dana. So,
Ah,
and
so
it
because
is
Maharaj calls it Altadanga. So I
right.
was,
Temple is there. Uh, uh, so it's there, the number one Uttadanga Road.
hmm,
This nice temple. Princess of there, haven't visited that yet, but that's good. But
hmm.
last stories we're telling, those are really, really funny and interesting episodes. I'm glad to hear that. Which one book are you reading from? Like all three?
I mostly read from volume one because it carries his biography, but I did access volume two for the stories about his disciples. Actually, I volume one itself is pretty in detail, but if you see volume two and three, they carry a lot of information. So I assume that there are a lot more stories, and they go into detail about his mission, his preaching, so his the concepts that he was trying to give, I think the third book covers a lot of his lectures. So there's some translations about lectures, and it goes more into more detail. But the first book is the biggest, the thickest one.
I think 60 volumes. That's what you're saying, right?
Mm. Bhakti
No.
Siddhanta Vaibhava. Thank you so much, Mataji, for coming and listening. I think we
Love, and I'm glad that you listened to us, our request that you kind of read second part. Anyways,
I'm happy to do it for you. I'm more than happy. Yeah, I'm very grateful. I also read it to get it to you. So it's a win-win. Thank you so much, Mataji. Thank you for your encouragement. Um,
We are getting a lot of thank yous on the YouTube from various devotees.
Prabhu, I couldn't hear you.
Mataji, I will mute you. Then only I think his voice will come. Yeah.
So there are a lot of thank yous coming from
YouTube.
the YouTube and all. And
Actually, I just want to leave this comment, that Bhakti Vikas Maharaj is such an amazing writer. As I was reading through these stories, and because I was trying to tag different parts of the story, we can't read everything, right? So that's why I was struggling. I had tags all over. My book is full of my book is
yeah,
full of tags.
like Guru Maharaj.
Yeah,
Yeah.
but it's just when we try to find information, right? It's difficult to track through the pages, but you could see a lot of heart in his writing and the sweetness with which he had portrayed it. It's not just collection of information. With Bhakti Vikas Maharaj, there's a lot of sweetness in the writing, and it's something that I feel it's not been highlighted enough with the public.
Yeah.
He has this book that talks about glimpses into glimpses into the Indian society before, right? It talks about the society around a temple and how people used to live in the olden times, in the Agraharam, and how temple festivals used to be run. It was so sweet, the writing in the book. It took me home. It took me back decades to my grandmother and how they used to live. And I thought for Bhakti Vikas Maharaj to be able to do that, he has really absorbed the culture so well and understood it. And he's a hidden gem. For me,
Yeah.
he's really a hidden gem. So I'm so
Yeah.
grateful for this opportunity to let it shine, and let everybody see.
No, no, your lectures are very good. And actually, you bring all these stories and then you have highlights and then you expand on the each highlights from the book. The narration is very nice.
Thank you, bro.
That's excellent.
Yeah.
Yeah, I
But
mean, I guess,
we only know the Bhagavatam and the Bhagavad Gita, right?
right,
So I feel like these are opportunities for us to get to know the other authors as well. Because Prabhupada encouraged everybody to write. And these books are not like 1 year of work. This is like 10 years, 15 years of research.
right.
So this devotee has put a portion of their life into each book. So
Yeah.
it's an honor to get to read these
Yeah,
books.
and there are a lot of subtle aspects which is very much applicable. Just like, Prabhupada Lilamrita, there are many subtle aspects very much applicable to our current days, right? The society has changed a lot since
Yes,
the
yes.
Chaitanya Charitamrita was written or Srimad Bhagavatam was written, right?
And also, like, if you've read the seventh Goswami,
Mm.
and then you come down and you read this,
Mm.
and then you go to Prabhupada Leelamrita, if
Yeah.
you've done these
Connection.
three,
Connection.
it's mind-boggling the connections that pop up, and
Right.
the richness with which your understanding, it becomes 3D,
Yeah.
right? You get all these facets, the
The living
facades really
Bhagavatams.
built.
The living Bhagavatams, basically.
Yeah. Thank you so much, Prabhu. Could
Thank
not
you.
do anything without you. So grateful. It's a
I'm just
pleasure to see you every Wednesday.
try to
Thank you.
listen from people like you.
Thank you. Vachakalpatarubhyascha kripasinduvyavacha patitanam pavanebhyo vaishnavibhyo namo
Thank you.
namaः.
Manjulakanta Mataji ki jai, Srila Prabhupada ki jai,
Jai Bhakti
all the
Vikas Maharaj
Vaishnavas
ki
ki
jai.
jai. Thank you,
I
dear
bol.
devotees, joining online the Wednesday class. We do have classes also on Saturday morning and on Sunday evening. Those are both online and from the temple. It's your choice from wherever you want to attend, but we'll again meet on the next Wednesday online on the class. Vaibhava. Thank you.